Death is difficult, but inevitable. That's why I want to remind you that it doesn't have to be so scary. Our mission is to educate, center, and intrigue you while making tasteful humor along the way. Welcome to another episode of Home is Where the Grave Is. We are your hosts, Dulce.
And I'm Unity. Join us in our journey to educate, intrigue, and center ourselves on the subject of death and what comes after.
Well, hello there.
Hello to you and to you, our still living listeners.
This is my new house, by the way. I haven't said that yet.
Yay! You finally moved in. About killed you.
Yes, please don't reverse search this image and find out where I live and then call one of those, what do they call them? The SWAT me? You know, when you call like a SWAT team on somebody's house in order to get them. Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You may find some disturbing things, but none of it is illegal.
That's right. Allegedly. So how have you been?
Morbidly fascinated.
Very, very morbid. Yeah. Morbidly fascinated. It just came out as gibberish.
So, somebody thinks my house is haunted. I don't think so because I don't believe in ghosts. But my partner has been brushing his hair, you know, in our bathroom with a white brush. And I saw a bunch of stuff in the drawer on his side, figured it was his. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Because I started looking at the stuff more carefully and was like, wait a second. My partner doesn't own 80s Revlon makeup, especially not this shade of blue that only an older white woman would wear. And then I really start looking through the drawer. There were tweezers, pictures of grandkids, medicines, suppositories. And some other interesting things. And that's when I informed him. I'm like, where'd you get that brush? He's like, what do you mean? It's your brush. I'm like, it's not my brush.
Awkward.
And the first thing he said was like, I'm going to hell, aren't I? And I'm like, well, you might get haunted. One or the other. And then we washed our hands after touching the suppositories. Unused.
Wait. Why did you touch Why did you touch those?
Because it was in a wrapper still. In the drawer. What? I didn't know they were suppositories, obviously. Okay. I read the thing, and that's how I know they were suppositories.
Congratulations.
So somebody left this house and left this woman's stuff behind. So I'm just wondering, what else am I going to find around here? I know she's dead. So there's a dead woman's stuff in my house. I, for one, welcome her.
Should we get started?
Anyway, we are, on that topic, we are talking about animals today.
We are.
More specifically, yes, mythological monsters.
How do we do this? Every time.
I know. So like basically what we're like gonna try to like explain today is like, so when it comes to myths, you know, and ghost stories, there always has to be something that started it, you know? Absolutely. There has to be a source, an origin. And it turns out that people for a long time have believed that a lot of these mythological creatures may have had some actual real origin, like an animal that was misinterpreted, or, you know, could even anything from like dinosaur bones. Because what's a 13th century peasant going to think when he sees a T-Rex skull sticking out of the ground, you know?
True. Facts.
Dragons. automatically.
I mean,
And there must be gold somewhere. Exactly. So, Unity, please introduce us.
Absolutely. So we're going to break this into two separate categories. So the first one is going to be mythological monsters, the most known and famous. So the first one on the list is Medusa. She was in the Greek mythology, a gorgon with snakes for hair whose gaze could turn people to stone. Now, she has a great, interesting story, and what's interesting is that her story has evolved from the past, which depicted her in a more grim outlook, but in modern times now, she is now more associated with the Me Too movement. So for a lot of women that have endured rape, the big R word, sexual abuse, go and get the Medusa tattoo, because as myth goes, Zeus was the one that seduced Medusa. So Medusa, as legend goes, was once a very beautiful and avowed priestess of Athena. So she was then cursed for breaking her vows, because she was supposed to have the vow of celibacy. But as it's described, and as well known, Zeus doesn't take no for an answer. And she was adamantly saying no. So technically that was rape. So that's why a lot of people, like back in the day, they were saying, oh, she got cursed and she had to deal with this curse because she broke her vows. Whereas in modern times, they're like, well, let's actually look at this description as maybe she wasn't cursed, but she was given a gift to protect herself so no one could ever harm her again. Maybe not.
Huh. That's an interesting way to see it.
Yeah. But it is interesting to see how she has morphed into modern sociology.
Modern interpretation of Medusa.
That's right. You want to get the next one?
I may remind you that Perseus, the guy who slays Medusa, has what do they call bubble butt? That statue, have you seen it?
No.
Very glorious, very, very well crafted and round booty on him.
I love that stands out to you.
Yes, it does. Nobody should be freaking. That should not be the focus of a freaking statue of a guy slaying Medusa. I don't know what was going through your head when you were doing that. I think it defeated the purpose. And nobody's looking at Medusa. They're looking at that booty, okay?
That booty be saving lives.
Booty. Those cheeks can clap.
All right, come on. Minotaur.
Okay. So, next we have the Minotaur. Again, also part of Greek mythology. He was a creature with the head of a bull and the body of a man dwelling in the labyrinth of Knossos. So his backstory is that Poseidon cursed Minos' wife because Minos didn't keep his deal to sacrifice the bull to Poseidon. So his wife, Pasiphae, caused him to fall in love and have sex with the bull that made the Minotaur.
So specifically, this goes back to Zeus also.
Yes.
So
of course,
Zeus, I forgot the mother's name of Minos, but Minos' mother was seduced by Zeus, who then bore 3 children, and Minos was one of them. I think he was a really shitty king. He kept using everybody's taxes and money to build up his kingdom. And he wasn't very popular, so he prayed to Poseidon. He's like, "Hey, man, do me a favor. Give me popularity, and I'll give you a sacrifice." And so Poseidon was like, "Let me give you this gorgeous bull, but you need to sacrifice it to me." So when Minos saw it, he was like, "Oh, that is a really dope bull. I'm gonna keep that bull and breed him with the rest of my livestock." So that pissed Poseidon off, and he's like, nah. So then he cursed Minos' wife, Pasiphae, to fall in love with the bull. Now, here, historical records of bestiality. Here we go. She then I don't know if you should be excited about that. She contracted carpenters to then create a wooden bull for her to then climb inside of to trick the male bull into, fornicating with the supposed wooden bull. There are pictures of this. Somebody drew diagrams for us to understand.
Insert penis here.
And then, of course, she got pregnant and gave birth to this monstrosity.
Who was then placed in a maze, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Those Greeks and Romans.
Also, that is the Minotaur is what the astrological symbol of Taurus is based on.
Yay.
You're welcome.
Bestiality is my origin. Yay.
Yay for the Greeks.
Along with another two different creature monstrosity is the griffin, a legendary creature with the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle. Greeks believed them to be the hounds of Zeus, even though there's no dog or wolf parts anywhere in that equation.
Okay, so the griffin, right? The griffin was really hard to find any information about. I was so frustrated. I was like short of actually buying a book on mythological creatures. The only thing I could get was like, they're the hounds of Zeus. They're on the top of the giant mountains over there at the... Hold on, I wrote it down. They're
He's like, what do you want me to say? It's a freaking eagle in the body of a lion. Like, that's it, okay?
It's a bird. What do you want from me? And the symbolism behind it was to say, like, this being was so great that it was both the king of the birds, because an eagle is the king of birds, and the king of mammals, because the lion is considered the king of mammals. So it's like double trouble.
Symbolism on top of symbolism. They're just trying too hard right there.
So they were rumored to be the guardians on top of mountains of southern Hyperborea. And they were... I think a couple of things. They ran the chariot for Apollo, and then they also guarded gold on top of the mountains.
Huh.
They had
Interesting.
a lot of jobs, apparently.
And I see that these griffins are also in Hindu culture, religion, mythology.
Yes. Interestingly enough, there is I forgot his name. I'll insert the name here. But it's really interesting. That's another great creature that has to do with the Lord Vishnu. Mentioned very briefly, but he was in great servitude of Vishnu, which is very reminiscent of the Greeks and how they were in servitude to Zeus.
So the one-eyed giant from Greek mythology, he protects the ravines of southern Hyperborea, according to the Greeks. They were gigantic beings, and with one eye, they were still able to have this enormous strength. Originally, there were 3 of them, Argus, Steropes, and Brontes, capable blacksmiths, son of Uranus and Gaia, and the brothers of the Hecatoncheires and the Titans. All those words were not pronounced correctly. I apologize. They were imprisoned by Cronus, but released by his son Zeus, for whom they forged his famous thunderbolt as a sign of gratitude. That much I know from the Disney version of Hercules.
That's right. It's really interesting with these guys because the originals, they were rumored to be like capable, like you were saying, capable blacksmiths, smart. Whereas like their descendants are like these lazy, slow moving, like easily fooled, naive cyclopses, right? Kind of like in the story of Odysseus. Yeah, Odysseus. Where the Cyclops was easily fooled and killed. So it's interesting. I don't know. The stories evolve and devolve with these guys. They're really interesting because you know how we said the griffins were at the top of the mountains in Hyperborea? Well, these guys lived at the ravines of Hyperborea, and they were rumored to be the ones that kept going up the hills and stealing gold from the griffins. And the griffins hated them. There's some conflict with history and mythology with this. So either these were the people that rode the horses up the mountains, or there were a separate group of people that rode the horses up the mountains to steal the gold. Either way, that's what made the griffins really hate horses. So you know how we said that some animals will carry like crows, they'll carry a grudge through generations. That's how griffins feel about horses. So even if there's no one riding them, they're like, F that horse. F that horse and all of their ancestors.
All right, so now we've got the Sphinx, a creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human or animal, often portrayed as a garden and riddler. Then we have the Chimera, a fire-breathing creature with the body of a lion, the head of a goat arising from its back, and a tail ending in a snake's head. There's a DNA example of this too.
The helix?
I'm talking about that. I'm talking about people that have two different sets of genes, DNA in them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they called it a chimera. Sybaris, a multi-headed dog that guards the gates of the underworld. Hydra, a serpentine water monster with multiple heads capable of regenerating when one head is cut off. Shout out to Hercules again.
And
Harpy. Oh yeah. Hail Hydra.
Yeah.
Harpy, winged creatures with the body of a bird and the head of a woman, often depicted as vicious and predatory. And boobies. And
don't forget that Kraken, the giant sea monster from Scandinavia folklore capable of sinking ships.
Woohoo! So now we're going to go into societal interpretations of possibly real animals, meaning that some of these creatures may have had some sort of real origin at some point.
And there's a difference between the Eastern versus Western interpretations of these creatures. Same ones.
AKA, stop us. What is it? Don't assume things. You know, when you see something crazy and you're just like, demons everywhere. No, it's probably a cat that knocked something over. Her house is not haunted, you know?
No imagination.
So, dragons. These mythical creatures often depicted as large reptilian beings with wings and the ability to breathe fire. You know, they capture the princess, hoard gold, all that bull. And of course, there's, the Eastern and the Western tropes. We know that there are things that kind of look like dragons today, and there were things that looked like dragons a long time ago. Maybe not necessarily, I'm thinking dinosaurs, but there might have been some stuff that, went extinct. There might have been some real reptile that went extinct long before we even were aware of it,
That's very true. It's interesting. It's very possible because the Western interpretation has them almost looking like a giant dinosaur, right? With wings. While the Eastern interpretation has them without wings. They just look like a giant flying serpent.
But it's fascinating. So they look like dragons, right? For Westerners. And for the Easterners, they kind of look like serpents. Well, there are bones that fit both interpretations of dinosaurs. Most likely what happened here is that people found dinosaur bones. And we know that there are dinosaur bones with long necks, the Brontosaurus and all those different types. And then we have the T-Rexes, the big, bulky, giant teeth, giant head. And so people obviously trying to explain what these bones could have belonged to. That's where dragons came from. There's actually a documentary of scientists trying to find out whether dragons existed or not. I recommend watching.
Absolutely.
And a modern day example now are Komodo dragons. as such named. They are what I consider a good alternative to dragons since they are the largest living lizards in the world and typically weigh about 154 pounds. The largest known specimen of Komodos reached a length of 10.3 feet. That's like dragon sizes, okay?
Good.
They can reach, exactly. They can reach speeds to up to 10 to 13 miles per hour and hunt using claws. And they don't breathe fire, but their bite contains poison and dangerous bacteria that is guaranteed to kill anything that manages to escape them. So after you die, they just smell you out because they can smell really well and then just eat you. So it's just a waiting game for them. They can also see objects as far away as 985 feet. There you go. There's your dragons. Don't need to look forward. You know, yeah.
What's fascinating about this too is that stories about dragons go as far back as ancient Mesopotamia, and it's widespread. Like when we say Eastern versus Western, we're talking about the regions. So you're including like the Eastern region of like you've got Korea, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, Taiwan, and then you've got the Western area that includes like Poland, Spain, Romania, Russia, Australia, the Americas, indigenous people. Like it's even Mexico. It is spread everywhere, which is really strange that is a shared concept. And you'll see that theme happen a lot with all these monsters.
So next we have unicorns. You know, the legendary horse-like creature with a single horn on its forehead, the best friend of every 5-year-old girl. And earliest mention in ancient Mesopotamia / India is wild ass. China, Japan, Korea, Thailand, and Greece also have their own unicorns. So it's a very widespread notion found in many very different cultures. So the legend of the unicorn first emerged in 398 BC. A Greek physician wrote, "There are in India certain wild asses which are as large as horses and larger. Their bodies are white, their heads dark red, and their eyes dark blue. They have a horn on the forehead which is about 1.5 feet in length."
There was a lot of issues with this too. With all these different types of various animals, especially unicorns, where they said certain parts of them were said to have healing properties. A lot of people took advantage of that and would sell body parts of different animals, claiming it was part of this unique one, like a unicorn. Like, oh, look at this horn. It's part of a unicorn, when it was really somebody's tusk. It was one of the other animal's tusk. They're like, this has healing properties, and they made a killing off of this. Not only did they fool people into buying their merchandise and they made a killing, but they perpetuated the whole idea and the myth and the folklore of medicinal properties for these type of animals.
So somebody took something out of context and then exaggerated it for monetary value. It's basically humanity.
My favorite part is still the wild ass of India. You don't get any better than that. The wild ass of India.
The origin of the unicorn.
But again, just like the dragon, they were saying that it's a possible that there may have been some kind of a horse that carried these type of properties. Maybe there was some kind of evolutionary adaptation.
Or a deformed horse.
I don't know.
Or a rhino.
Or
somebody mistook a rhino.
That's one of the biggest things they kept saying too. It was possibly a rhino and somebody mistook it for like a unicorn. But the unicorn has also carried like a lot of symbolic interpretation, mostly to be like of purity and peace, grace, elusive beauty. There's a few stories out there that says that unicorns are very shy and timid, and they only came out to the pure of heart or virgins.
So next we have the phoenix.
Yay!
A mythical bird associated with fire and rebirth. The cyclic nature of death and resurrection has been interpreted as a symbol of renewal and immortality. And my co-host used to believe that they were real.
First of all, just like all of these animals and how we've presented this idea, I believe they were based off of a real animal that people misinterpreted and then absolutely exaggerated the crap out of. Because if you think about the bird of paradise, right? Especially if you're in 18th century or older, like 300 BC, and you're looking at the bird of paradise and you're like, oh, Phoenix. You know what I mean? It's completely possible. Just like the dragons.
If they were me, I'd be like, demon bird, bring out my cross and run away.
Demon bird.
So, once again, a phoenix is another one of those mythological creatures that have been recorded in a bunch of different cultures that have nothing to do with each other almost. You know, Greek, Chinese, Hindu, Slavic, Jewish, and Christian traditions.
Crazy.
I guess, like, obviously, if you travel, you're going to come in contact with other cultures, and that's probably how this ended up spreading around.
Everybody intersects at some point.
Exactly. So obviously that's how these tales get shared along the way. And with anything, the lack of scientific understanding, people would exaggerate any accounts they actually saw. Maybe they saw a bird on fire and assumed it was going to still be alive afterward.
Hold on. They saw a bird on fire, and then they saw a second bird that they didn't know it was a second bird, and they're like, oh, it came back to life.
Or the bird didn't die because it was on fire. Or have you ever heard of the bone-eating vulture?
You've told me about this before, but why would that have anything to do with the phoenix?
Because they use dirt and soil to color their feathers red. No, they're not supposed to be red. They color their feathers purposely with red.
I do remember that. See? Somebody got a little colorful with their words and like the bird is on fire. And then everybody else took it literally.
But they don't exist.
No, I'm not saying they actually exist. Unless I go to Diagon Alley.
So yeah, different cultures have their own version of the phoenix. There's the Egyptian Venu, which is often associated with the sun god Ra. Arabian rock from the Middle East. Firebird, the Russian folklore. Large fiery bird with vibrant plumage. And the phoenix has obviously been a symbol that you typically see a lot in art and literature because of that whole representation of life after death and the cycle of life and starting over again. So there you go.
Whoop, whoop. Phoenixes. Fly.
Uh-huh. No. So now we move on to mermaid.
You don't like
half human, half fish. No, because I'm me.
All right.
No. Okay, so mermaids, half human, half fish creatures that have captivated human imagination for centuries and horny men. I think that's like the main point of mermaids. They're associated with beauty, enchantment, the lure of the sea. And that's because we've been assuming that the half human, half fish is the fish on the bottom and human on the top. If it were the other way around, obviously this wouldn't have worked out.
There's so many memes about that.
So you do see mermaids in Greek, Irish, Scandinavian, and Arabic mythology, as well as Africa. They are, in Japan, there's a mythological creature called the Nyenyo, often translated as mermaid or merman. Although Japan always has like these very disturbing looking creatures, so wouldn't hit that. So obviously mermaids is probably due to lack of scientific investigation, exaggeration, and what happens to men when they're out in sea for very long periods of time with no loving embraces from a woman. Belief behind it is that they saw some manatees that are voluptuous creatures out on the sea, and when you're on the sea for that long and you're dehydrated, starving, probably sick, and probably dying of scurvy, you tend to hallucinate that those manatees are looking mighty fine. And then wasn't the ideal feminine form like a chunky lady? So then manatees kind of fall neatly into that description. God hope that nobody tried to have sexual intercourse with a manatee, but I mean, we just try not to think about that too hard.
We're going to step away from the bestiality topic.
I'm doing a lot of bestiality today, haven't we?
Apparently. But also a lot of folklore of the mermaids obviously stuck around areas that were surrounded by ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So,
True.
Or, way of passage where, like you said, the tired old souls of the sailors had to dock and they brought stories with them.
They just didn't want to tell you the truth.
They didn't want to tell you the truth. They realized later that those were manatees, not mermaids.
Or it's either your fellow male sailors or the manatees. And neither one is going to be a good story to tell. So mermaids it is.
What happens at sea stays at sea.
Yes, exactly. So the Yeti. We move on to Yeti or the Bigfoot because they're kind of like almost the same story. Like basically this big, giant, hairy creature with some giant feet living in very remote areas or tundras.
But
like
two different locations because like you were saying, the Yeti is more snow, Himalayans, versus Bigfoot is more like regional.
And isn't there a dedicated group of people that honestly believe that Bigfoot is real?
Yeah. There's let me see here. What are they called? They are called the cryptozoologists. They're the ones that go ahead and study folklore that is possibly real, not proven incorrect.
And so it's interesting. So the Yeti, which is very well known everywhere, especially in Western Hemisphere, but it is famously associated with the Himalayan mountain range, which is in Nepal, Tibet, and Bhutan. Herpa and Tibetan folklore include stories of a large ape-like creature inhabiting the high-altitude snowy regions, meaning that's the only creature that would be able to survive up there. And then Bhutan, the Yeti is known as Migoi or Migo. But in North America, we have the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch is another word for it. And this fellow tends to meander the wilderness regions of North America, particularly in the Pacific Northwest of the United States and Canada. The Bigfoot does have names in indigenous people's cultures, have legends and stories of a large hairy man-like creature living in the forest. And of course, the Bigfoot has since gained widespread attention and popularity during the 20th century, appearing in books, films, and television shows, and is an iconic figure, or basically symbol of cryptozoology. So, and Bigfoot could very likely be real because he could just be a big hairy man with big feet.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, the craze for Bigfoot has been rampant in the United States. And it's funny, or in North America, and it's funny because other countries have also heard about this craze and have joined in on the ideology. So much so that groups go together to go hunt for the Bigfoot. They camp out. They spend their lives hunting for them. You say sometimes there's a driveway that I pass by that has a giant outline of a Bigfoot in their yard. I remember as a kid, one of my favorite movies was in the 90s. It was called Harry and the Hendersons.
I remember that. Yes.
It was great. But it's just to show like Bigfoot has been a huge part of our pop culture for years.
But people neglect to know how hairy men and women can get. And then there is something called the werewolf syndrome with people that have an abnormal amount of hair grow all over their body, which affects both men and women. So you may have seen either a male or female Bigfoot, just with a lot of hair, one with boobies.
Facts.
So please don't go hunting hairy people down. They're just hairy people. They mean no harm.
Leave them alone.
So now we move on to the Thunderbird, a legendary creature in Native American folklore. When I hear Thunderbird, I just think of Zapdos in Pokemon.
Oh. It's similar.
Yeah, I mean, they're a bird capable of thunder and lightning, associated with power, protection, and spiritual significance. Particularly, the Thunderbird is mentioned in the Pacific Northwest Coast, Haida, Tinglik, Coast Salish, and which all have rich traditions and stories related to the Thunderbird. And its Thunderbird is also seen as a guardian spirit and symbol of strength. The Plains tribe's Lakota Sioux, the Thunderbird is associated with rain and life-giving forces. So what do you think the Thunderbird is, Uditi?
Well, it's interesting because I know the indigenous people were very close with nature and its spirits, its vibrations. So I think with there being so many natural disasters and probably some seriously hard thunderstorms, there's no telling. And I know the myth of the Thunderbird is really fascinating. They go back to the Thunderbird itself is pretty much the creator of men versus had its natural nemesis, which stayed below, and the Thunderbird constantly fights the nemesis, which is this giant serpent that is very jealous of man, named, I'm going to try my best to pronounce this, the Miziki Nubik. It's a great horned snake, and the Thunderbird always fights it back to stay in its place. And it's fascinating because you'll see symbolism of the Thunderbird in a lot of indigenous artwork, especially, you remember the poles? The giant wooden poles that they carve?
Yeah.
Those, you'll see a giant bird, which a lot of people think is the eagle, but a lot of the times it is representation of a Thunderbird.
So what do you think the Thunderbird is? I mean, obviously it makes sense, okay? Right? Thunder. What's going to be in the sky when there's thunder? I mean, not what's in the sky and then thunder's in the sky. So obviously a bird. And then I'm going to assume somebody saw a cool-ass fight scene with an eagle, like, grabbing a snake and tearing it up in the sky. And they're like, that is God. Is Bay. Is base.
We'll also think about, like, a creative viewpoint on this, right? So think about whenever we look up in the clouds. We all see different shapes, sizes of creatures and things that we associate with what we know with the clouds, and we're like, oh, look, there's a cute bunny, there's a whatever. Well, when lightning strikes, it forms different shapes. So who knows, maybe at some point there was a giant thunderstorm and the lightning struck and it made it look like a giant ass bird fighting a snake. Moving from that fascinating story, we're going to be finishing up with werewolves.
Rawr.
Rawr. So, werewolves, being the mythical creature that are part human and part wolf, often associated with the full moon and transformations, right? They have been interpreted as symbols of primal instincts and the duality of human nature, notably mentioned in European folklore, particularly in regions like France, Germany, Scandinavia, and the British Isles, because them people couldn't leave hairy people alone. Greek mythology goes as far as to say in ancient Greece, there are stories of lycanthropes, individuals who were cursed or possessed by the spirit of a wolf. Slavic folklore says that they're the Vukodlak. Native American folklore calls them the shapeshifters. That's very commonly known. Shapeshifters transform into wolves and other animals. Arabic folklore, there are stories of the Kutrub and many more. You have Norse mythology. You even have it in India, South Asian cultures, and Japan. But Japan refer to them as the yokai, or like demons.
Huh.
So yeah, what came about werewolves? Like, what brought this on? We've previously talked about like hereditary conditions, medical conditions, where it's just an excess of hair.
Shitty beauty ideals. Hairy people demonized in the media.
Yeah. Superstitions and belief systems. There could even be reports of wolf attacks, varying sizes, and maybe they misinterpreted it as a, werewolf.
What about dudes that wear a wolf pelt? Just walking around with a wolf pelt.
That could be it. Maybe he was suffering some psychosis. You know what I mean? Wearing a wolf pelt, howling at the moon. There you go.
And then probably, something that we haven't thought about before. Obviously, there are some cultures where having wolf pelts on is like part of like the traditional attire. And then those stories get told, and then people start interpreting them into something else just because some dude was hairy or some dude was wearing a wolf pelt. And now there's a freaking werewolf loose and killing people. But I really like that whole idea of the duality of man.
Mm-hmm.
So that is basically what the wolf kind of represents.
The primal side.
Mm-hmm. On their desires of hunger, starvation, hunger and desire, basically.
Yeah.
And there's some sexy werewolves out there.
What was it, that show? Teen Wolf?
Exactly. Wolves are sexy now. So hot.
So
not
hot.
hairy though.
So to wrap up, I absolutely love mythology and its creatures. It's various creatures and the human imagination and takes on all these different creatures and the creation of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're true or maybe over exaggerated or completely fabricated, they're fascinating nonetheless.
It's nice to like believe that there was in some form they did actually exist. Like, haven't people said that dwarfs were probably, just short people from a certain country that just happened to be really good with tools?
And then here's a whole folklore about them. I'm just trying to exist, man. Leave me alone.
That's why our mission is to bring you the material and immaterial resources to help soothe some of your fears and grief.
Don't forget to follow along for a new episode every Monday on all major podcast platforms, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more, to include YouTube. Watch us on our YouTube video podcast. If you enjoy listening, then please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. If you have questions or want to pique your morbid curiosity, then visit our socials on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And hey, email us some questions, stories, or remarks at sweetprogressinc@gmail.com. Don't forget to get some of that merch on your way out at our Etsy shop, Delicate Death. Until next time, Stay alive.
Sort of. We almost got it.